السلام عليكم ورحمة الله وبركاته. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. الحمد لله رب العالمين، والصلاة والسلام على سيد المرسلين سيدنا محمد وعلى آله وأصحابه أجمعين. ما بعد، اللهم لا علم لنا إلا ما علمتنا إنك أنت العليم الحكيم. اللهم افتح علينا بحكمتك وانشر علينا برحمتك يا ذا الجلال والإكرام. الحمد لله الذي هدانا لهذا وما كنا لنهتدي لولا أن هدانا الله. جزاكم الله خيرا. Thank you very much for the kind invitation to speak on this most important event, or this most important topic called Sharia parameters on digital assets. Inshallah, through the session, I will talk about how we have been analyzing crypto over the years and focusing on, in fact, crypto assets and digital assets. And we will talk about the manner in which Sharia scholars should be looking at the matter, and of course what scholars have already been saying about the digital assets. Now, if we begin, first of all, we're witnessing, as they say, the creative destruction of financial services, and it's rearranging itself around the consumer. So a famous fintech expert, Arvind Sankaran, has said this: who does this in the most relevant, exciting way, using data and digital, wins. So for today, we are going to talk about the global approach, or the state of crypto and digital assets. We'll talk about the palm tree effect, and then move into technology and a brief Sharia analysis of technology, and then of course move into crypto, and potentially I'll try to present to you a step-by-step approach of the ideal setting of parameters for the topic. So to begin with, and I'll just give you a very quick rundown of what's been happening internationally. Distinguished scholars and respected colleagues, this topic is really pertinent because it affects many Muslim lands, Muslim communities around the world, simply because there are challenges in transferring funds across nations, across countries and communities. And we find that crypto solves some of these problems and issues and barriers. However, it does create a few more. So is it permissible or not? Let's talk about that, and let's talk about the thinking behind it. So as we speak, the global crypto market is valued at approximately 2.5 to 3 trillion US dollars. So we're not talking about a single Bitcoin here. We are now talking about more than 24,000 distinct crypto tokens or currencies or digital assets that are in circulation. The human impact is staggering. On one side, we have roughly 88,000 to 100,000 crypto millionaires globally. On the other side, the losses are devastating. In the last year alone, losses due to fraud, hacks, regulatory non-compliance have exceeded more than 20 billion US dollars. So this ecosystem is not a calm sea. It's a hurricane. In my own writing on crypto, a contagious disease, I described the volatility of this market with a specific image that I would like to share with you. And I said that for short-term investors, crypto is notoriously volatile, and it swings like a palm tree in a hurricane, sharing its fruit with just a few fortunate individuals who manage to climb the tree, grab the coconut, and get off just in time. The majority, however, are often shaken off the tree. And this means that there is a significant amount of people that are losing in crypto trade than actually those that are gaining. Yet, despite this complexity and danger, we do face a methodological crisis in our own field. the persistence of what I can call the binary fatwa. The binary fatwa is whether it is 1 or 0, whether it is halal or haram. And scholars are still asked to bless or ban this entire $3 trillion hurricane with a single word. So our discussion for today is quite simple. And my thesis is a single blanket fatwa for crypto is methodologically fragile. From an usuli perspective, this cannot be the way in which we look at crypto at all. So to issue one ruling for Bitcoin, a stable coin, a DeFi token, and a utility token, all at the same time, is like prescribing one medicine for all diseases. It risks both error and unfairness, injustice. As the legal maxim states, الحكم على الشيء فرع عن تصوره. الحكم على الشيء فرع عن تصوره means that when we look at a matter, we are not allowed to issue a ruling until and unless we understand the entire context around the matter. So, before we provide opinions on issues like crypto or digital assets, then we must ensure we understand the concept, the origin, the technical aspects of it before we can even open our mouths. So, let us begin with the ontology, the history. Where does it come from? The concept. Before we discuss even blockchain, which is, introduced to humanity through Bitcoin, according to, the famous white paper in 2009, we have to actually ask a bigger question. Can a purely digital code be recognized as property in Islam? So in classical fiqh, for something to be the subject of a valid contract, it must be mal, it must be wealth or property. And here, this mal must not be any mal, but a mal mutaqawwam, a valuable wealth in the eyes of the Sharia. So when we look at the Majalla in particular, that helps us to define what mal is, then we realize that according to Article 126 of the Majallatul Ahkam al-Adaliyah, it states, المال ما يميل إليه الطبع ويمكن ادخاره لوقت الحاجة. So this is the first premise of assessing the digital asset for compliance. Mal is that to which human nature inclines and which can be stored for times of need. We've got to ask ourselves as we go along, does crypto fit this? And if we ask if it fits this concept of mal mutaqawwam, then there are really three primary constituents of mal to be recognized in the Sharia. The first is tamawul. Tamawul is it desirable? Is it something that the market values in the first place? Even if they value it speculatively, we have to determine whether the market sees any value in it. The second is iddikhar, storage. Can it be stored in wallets? Can it store value? Can it be secured by code or keys? Can it be safe? The third is transferability. So this is naql. Can it actually be transferred? Can it be moved from peer to peer? Now, beyond these three specific aspects, we've got to ask ourselves a bigger question. There's a critical fork in the road when we look at a digital asset. We've got to ask, is this a currency or is this an asset? So before we get to that, let's just take a step back and understand how technology would be understood from a Sharia perspective. So if you're looking at the slide, the first aspect is we've got to determine whether the technology that we will be utilizing actually prevents harm and promotes public benefit. Why? It is because when we look at the highest objective of the Sharia, Ibn Ashur quite eloquently states that the highest legal maxim for understanding the Sharia is to ensure that we apply dar'ul mafasid and jalbul masalih. What this means, and there's one important word in between, is that we must remove harm and promote goodness, public benefit. But in order to do this, we must ensure sequence. So dar'ul mafasid awla min jalbil masalih, safety first, we remove harm first, and then we go on and promote public benefit. So if what we're looking at is doing this, we know we are on the right track. The second principle is something that we are well aware of, and I'll cover again a little later. It states, al-asl fil ashya al-ibaha illa ma yadullu, except what it points, or except when it points to something clearly haram. So everything is permissible unless specifically prohibited, except if something or evidence points us to something haram. So if it doesn't violate any of the prohibitions that are well known in the Sharia, then we're good to go. The third aspect that we look at briefly is the concept of maslaha. And maslaha comes from the jalbul masalih, the maslaha. So we will look at that again briefly. Is it promoting public benefit? And then finally, the Sharia considerations. We have to be clear that technology itself is generally agnostic, doesn't follow any religion per se, and it is neither good or bad. It is rather an enabling framework that we may utilize for our benefit, or we may cause harm. And technology needs to be seen in this manner. So now we need to go into this big question of whether crypto is an asset or a currency. Is it a scheme or a scam? Is it a puzzle? What is it? So we need to first identify whether, from a fiqhi perspective, we're going to categorize it as thaman or sila. If it is thaman, then it is currency or money. If it is sila, then it is commodity or goods or urud. And you know that the rulings are quite different for the two. This is not just an issue of semantics. If we classify a token as thaman, as currency, then it will fall under the strict rules under Babu Sarf. And Babu Sarf and currency exchange require specific rules to be fulfilled. Mithlan bi mithlin, yadan bi yadin, like for like, hand to hand. And if it is unlike, then bi'atu kama shi'ti, yani you trade as you wish, but it must be yadan bi yadin, it still must be at spot. So these are the primary rules of bay' or sarf. They require immediate settlement, and any prohibition will be a delay. But if it is sila, if it is urud, the rules of bay' apply, not bay' or sarf, and that means we have more flexibility. Now, many scholars, including the Grand Mufti of Egypt and several institutions in India, have initially ruled that Bitcoin failed the test of thaman, of currency, because it lacked state backing and stability. So from their perspective, the only time you can classify anything as currency is if it is legal tender. And because Bitcoin technically is not legal tender issued by government except for El Salvador, the rest of the world will not allow crypto as a national currency. So based on their opinions, immediately it fails the test of thaman. Now, scholars in South Africa and Malaysia, on the other hand, have argued that if society accepts that it is a medium of exchange, it is thaman, then this acceptance is based on the fiqhi principle of istilah. And istilah refers to social concurrence. In other words, if you and I believe that this is currency and the entire community believes such, and we trade it and we use it to buy goods and we all accept it as currency, well, then it does become thaman. It does become currency. Now, the challenge here is that all crypto are not the same. Therefore, not all cryptos are even trying to be money. Now, this is an important question that we need to ask as we go along. There are different categories. There are varying underlying characteristics. Therefore, we cannot look at them as the same. So, a brief intermission of the status of and the brief history over the last 6 years at least. Bitcoin in February 2019 for the first time passed $1 trillion in value. In June 2019, El Salvador adopts Bitcoin as legal tender. And then in December 2025, the overall value of crypto is $2.7 trillion. Now, I want you to see that 6 years ago, way back in November 2019, we hit the 3 trillion mark already, which means that in the last 6 years, we're sitting with a high volatility. And if you look at the graph, you can see that this volatility can hit hard. Bitcoin lost 50% of its value since between November 2019 and December 2023. So you find that there is this swinging and volatility, as we explained in the hurricane and the palm tree. Now, let's get back into the classification of cryptos and how we should establish our Sharia parameters and our screening methodology. So, how do we filter 24,000 tokens? We cannot use a halal haram stamp without a process. So what I'm proposing, and I have proposed for the last 7 years, is that we have a juristic pipeline consisting of 4 key filters. So we understand in the first filter, this is the filter of characterization. In other words, takyif fiqhi. What is the characterization according to the jurisprudence? What is the underlying reality? Because when we look at the coins or the cryptos that are available, we have payment coins, and in particular, Bitcoin is an example here, and hence we now will screen this as currency, as thaman, and if so, bay or sarf applies. But then we also have utility coins, and the utility coin is giving us access to a service or a cloud service. And this means that we are getting some manfa'a, some benefit, some usufruct out of this crypto, and we will have to screen it as manfa'a, not as thaman. But then we have asset-backed coins. And asset-backed coins will have gold or oil or other commodities that are backing them. So this will probably have to go under the category of sila or urud. Then we have governance tokens that create voting rights. And governance tokens dominate in the primary token category, at least in the first 50 top tokens in the world. So here we will have to screen it differently, potentially as a wakala, because it creates membership rights and there is agency to a group of individuals that are acting on behalf of us. So the first filter, as we say, is we need to know what is the takyif fiqhi. Then, beyond this, we need to understand a very important aspect, and that is in step 2 or filter 2, we can call it the test of qabd, the reality of possession. In fiqh, you cannot sell what you do not possess. The bay'ul ma'adum is impermissible except in the case of istisna and salam. So we know from the famous hadith of the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam, we are not allowed to sell what we do not own. لا تبيع ما ليس عندك. Do not sell what you do not possess. In the digital realm, we apply the fiqhi ruling of al-qabd al-hukmi, which is constructive possession, because when we are trading digital assets, we're actually not holding anything physically. But the question is, do we hold the private keys? Do we hold any real ownership of power? Do we have tamkin, the ability to dispose? Do we have takhliya, non-interference, meaning we have full independence of what we own? So if you buy a crypto on an exchange and it prevents you from withdrawing it, you do not have qabd. You have an unsecured debt against the exchange. Trading this will be trading debt, and this will fall under bay'ul dayn or bay'ul kali bil kali, which we know is problematic according to the majority of the scholars. So the second filter, as we said, is the issue of qabd and al-qabd al-hukmi. The third parameter, filter 3, is the contract, the underlying contract. And this is raf'ul jahala, or contractual integrity. Is the smart contract clear? So in the perspective of the DeFi, decentralized finance, many tokens have backdoors. And these backdoors are where developers can mint new coins, new crypto, or they can freeze assets. This introduces gharar fahish, excessive uncertainty. And if the code allows the issuer to pull the rug beneath us, the contract becomes void. So therefore, we need to determine if we truly own the asset, have a right to dispose of the asset, and now we need to determine the contract and our relationship with this asset, and whoever has attempted to sell it to us, do we actually have contractual integrity? Filter 4. In filter 4, we've got to ask the basic question, and that is the prohibition. So, al-asl fil ashya' al-ibaha, is there any riba or any maysir or any high level of gharar involved in the transaction? Does the token guarantee a fixed return if you were to stake it, if you held it or you farmed it? So if you are doing this and there's an APR, or there is this return or a yield that's coming to you annually or periodically, and that is guaranteed, well, then that would be riba. The second question would be maysir. Is there any gambling? Is the token's primary use speculation? Meaning, if a token has no manfa'a and is traded solely on the hope of a price spike, then it moves from bay' to maysir, and we do not have a valid transaction. So these are the 4 key filters that we can apply from the Sharia parameters perspective. Now, let's take a step a little bit further, and let's talk about it from a fiqhul ma'alat perspective. And this is a broader economic and fiqhi challenge. So we now move from the micro, from the contract, to the macro, the consequence. And this is what fiqhul ma'alat is all about, the fiqh of outcomes or consequences. A famous saying comes to mind of Imam al-Shatibi. Imam al-Shatibi states, النظر في مآلات الأفعال معتبر مقصود شرعا. Considering the consequences of actions is intended, and it holds weight, it's legally weighty. So that means that even if a token technically looks like a valid sale, we must ask, what is the economic reality? So this is the first challenge. So the issue of the contagious disease of volatility, challenge number 1. So referring back to my palm tree example, if an asset class is routinely wiping itself out 70% of its value, causing massive wealth destruction for retail investors, does it violate the maqasid? Does it violate hifdhul mal? And that is a question we need to ask ourselves. So high volatility will begin to blur the line between legitimate risk, ghuram bil ghuram, and forbidden gambling, qimar or maysir. That's the first challenge, volatility. The second challenge is market microstructure and its manipulation. So current markets are actually rife with manipulation, what is known as wash trading. So in other words, there's a creation of a fake volume that's created by bots, and then there is this pump and dump principle. So it's pumping up of the value of the crypto, and then it's dumping it, and then you have a huge loss. Now the question is, from a fiqhi perspective, this seems to be falling directly in the category of najash, deceptive inflation of prices. The Prophet ﷺ explicitly forbade it, bay'un najash. So if a token's liquidity is fake, the price is kadhib, is a lie. Challenge number 3, evasion of the real economy. So Islamic finance seeks to couple finance with the real economy. And this is the النشاط الاقتصادي الحقيقي. النشاط الاقتصادي الحقيقي is this activity of linking economics with the real economy. So many crypto assets, in fact, are circular. Money, making money with no goods or services produced. This is the very definition of the creation of a bubble. And therefore, when you look at the opinions of the scholars, you will see that they are looking at it either in a micro perspective or a macro perspective, but they are really actually bringing all of these things together. The Indonesian view in particular may be quite interesting because they said, well, crypto are unlawful because there's no sila. In other words, crypto, if they are currency, they are prohibited. So if you consider them as thaman, they are impermissible because they are not legitimate legal tender, and they are not sila because they have no underlying commodities, and therefore they are not tradable. In effect, the Indonesian ulama are saying, if you applied these filters in some way, or some of them, then you would allow the trading of crypto if there was sila. I'm arguing that several crypto actually do have sila, but that sila is in manfa'a. Okay, now, we have a look at what has happened in the digital experience in Malaysia, but I want to highlight in the last few minutes, how we can actually move forward. So we have to look at it from an ethical governance perspective, and you will see some of that ethical governance actually coming up in these opinions that you see here. So the first question is the door closed for crypto? Are we saying binary 1 and 0, all of what I've listed, therefore it is not permissible? No, we're not saying that. We're saying the door is open, but it must have guards. It must have a security standing in front of it. And this brings us to the concept of siyasa Shari'ah, governance and policy. So the permissibility of crypto cannot be separated from its regulation. So as I've argued so far, permissibility is determined token by token and is investor specific. And this means that you need a strict Sharia and regulatory set of guardrails before you consider it permitted. A Sharia compliant crypto ecosystem, for example, needs ethical governance. You cannot have anonymous teams behind it. Accountability is a prerequisite for amana. Number 2, you must have asset segregation. Exchanges cannot mix user funds with their own. We've seen this in the famous FTX collapse. This will ensure hifzul amana, the protection of the trust. Number 3, the proof of reserves must be audit verified. So there must be transparency on reserves, like USDT and Tether and others. You cannot just claim that you have values, otherwise you will potentially create a bubble and a harm. And la darara wa la dirar, as we all know, there shall be no harming and no reciprocating of that harm. So if a regulator bans crypto because of high fraud, that ban becomes valid under siyasa. If a regulator creates a safe sandbox to operate in, then the ruling may shift to ibaha, permissibility. So let's look at the summary and conclusion. First of all, what is the future focus for fiqh students? So I speak now to the students and future scholars at the conference. The era of copy-pasting fatwa from the books of past scholars and fatawa is gone. We cannot do this any longer. This is not a diligent or ethical or it lacks integrity and nobility when it comes to modern assets, because we know that there is a significant gap between fiqh al-waqi' and contemporary jurisprudence and the masail that were dealt with 100 and 1,000 years ago. So copying and pasting from books of bay or sarf, that's over. We've got to navigate the future. That means you must master a dual competency. This means that there has to be a cross-discipline here. Technical literacy, and this means you must understand what a smart contract actually is. You must understand what gas fees are, staking, farming, liquidity pools. You must understand how they work. You cannot judge what you do not conceptualize. Al-hukmu ala shay' far'un an tasawwurihi. The second issue is usuli agility. You must master the tools of sadd al-dhara'i, of maslaha and fiqh al-waqi'. And you must be able to bring a quantitative aspect to the assessment. You cannot use your mind subjectively in an opinionated fashion when it comes to quantitative matters. And these are algorithmic quantitative matters. So the question for your generation is not just, is it halal? The question is, does this technology serve the maqasid? Does it democratize finance? Or does it merely create a digital casino? So I leave you with the conclusion and summary of our discussion. We need to return to the famous understanding of the Sharia perspective, the broader perspective of ensuring we look at the concept and the surroundings. So trying to declare all crypto haram or all halal is like trying to classify all animals as fast or all animals as slow, when we know a cheetah is quick and a tortoise is not. It's an oversimplification. It betrays the intellect. The Sharia perspective on crypto must be more nuanced. It requires identifying a taxonomy. That means distinguish between payment, utility, security, governance, and asset-backed tokens, amongst others. There must be a verification, understanding that there is real qabd, there is real possession, and you're removing the gharar fahish. Then there must be governance, ensuring the system does not violate hifdhul mal. And if we use these perspectives clearly, then we can build a crypto ecosystem that is transparent, that's backed by real value, that's governed by ethics, and it fits within the Islamic economics worldview. If it remains in a palm tree in a hurricane, shaking off the wealth of the common man, it remains problematic. So I end with this, inshallah. We ask Allah Azza wa Jal to grant us the hikmah to distinguish between the beneficial and the harmful. We ask Allah Azza wa Jal to grant us the ability to understand that in order to move forward, we need to be cross-disciplined. We need to understand the technical aspects in more detail. We need to understand fiqh al-ma'alat, the fiqh of consequences. We need to be more in tune with fiqh al-waqi', and we need to utilize the usuli tools that have been given to us as guidance from our great teachers and scholars and lineage in a way that befits the modern contemporary issues and masail. So I will stop there. Jazakumullah khair. Thank you once again for the opportunity. May Allah forgive me for any indiscretions or any mistakes in this. I'm trying to pass on a message of my own limited understanding of the topic, which is new and it is evolving. وبالله التوفيق والهداية وآخر دعوانا أن الحمد لله رب العالمين والسلام عليكم ورحمة الله وبركاته.